Hi to everyone. MEM School of Engineering, Department of Mechatronics Engineering, online classes, subject Automotive Electronics, unit number 1, chapter 5. So last class we discussed about starting system. So the starting system will be main heart of the system because the starting system will enable the engine. That is, engine work for the different conditions. Okay, first the initial rotation in the engine will done by the starting system. Then starting system different parts and the main requirements like that we discussed in the last class. So in the starting system we have solenoid switch. Okay, that is when starter motor enable, that is starter motor for the particular when reach the starter motor will go for the particular speed. The solenoid switch will connect the rotor starter motor rotor to the engine shaft. Okay, this is the main advantage of solenoid switch. Okay, so in this session we are going to see about the solenoid switch. So principle, so what is application of a solenoid switch, what are the types like that we are going to discuss, what are the internal circuit components like that we are going to discuss in this concept. The main function of the solenoid switch, it switches the high current flow required by the starter motor on and off under condition, and it engages the starter drive with the ring gear. So this is the main function. So it is a switch high current flow required by the starter motor on and off, and it engages the starter drive with the main ring gear. This is the main function of the solenoid switch. So this is the circuit diagram of the solenoid switch. So solenoid switch having different part, that is starter switch, solenoid and battery. Okay, so when battery connected to the solenoid, it will define the, it will have the rings. That is, here we have two rings. One is connected with the starter motor, another one is connected with the battery. Once the starter motor rotates, so when high power will be produced through the rotor, so the solenoid automatically will move to the left side. That is a yellow mark, yellow mark in the solenoid will define, that is given to the left side. Okay, so automatically the other connected rotor will connect to the engine crankshaft. So this is the circuit diagram of the solenoid circuit. It is a simple one, but it circuit will be complicated always. Next, pulling windings. So pulling wind, then solenoids. So these are the two model. So see the pulling winding. Okay, this will these windings will define the when we need to pulling. Okay, that is pulling wind. So another one is holding wind. So this will define how much time the ring will be connected to the crankshaft, will defined by the holding wings. So only it is separated in the red and blue colors. It's a basic function of the solenoid switch. One end of the solenoid has a moving soft iron plunger which is connected to a lever that moves the starter drive. The other end has an insulated cap with the electrical connections to the solenoid windings. So along with a set of high current contacts and a movable copper disc, so that completes the crank circuit when the solenoid plunger is drawn forward. Once the cranking circuit is completed, current flows from the battery to the starter, field and armature. So operating principle of solenoid switch. So when the starter is activated, current passes through both starter windings. The magnetic fields from both windings work together to attract the solenoid plunger toward the main starter terminal in the solenoid cap. So plunger movement also operate the shift fork lever, thus engaging the drive pinion with the flywheel ring gear. The plunger contacts a switching pin which transfer the motion through a contact spring closing the main solenoid terminals. So this allows a large current to flow from battery through the starter motor windings, causing armature and pinion rotation and the rotation of the engine crankshaft. However, closing the contacts does another very important task. It shorts to power the output wire of the pulling winding, resulting in two sequential actions. First, the holding windings still have power from the control circuit. So it is continuous to hold the plunger in place while the starter cranks. Okay, so these are the basic operation. So next one is once the engine starts. So yeah, before we see that before engine start. So after engine start, we can connect the starter motor to the engine because it will be produce the reverse voltage to the starter. So because the speed of the engine crankshaft and starter motor will be varying. So we need to disconnect from the crankshaft. So once the engine start, the control circuit is deactivated. Now is when the second action come into play. The current stops flowing through the control circuit to supply the input of the holding and pulling windings. But the output of the pulling winding is still activated due to back EMF. So current flows backward through the pulling winding and then forward through the holding winding. Since the current flow in the two windings are opposite to each other, the two magnetic fields oppose each other and tend to cancel each other out. So thereby allowing the plunger return spring to react the plunger. This disconnect the power from the pulling and holding windings, as well as the starter motor, causing it to stop cranking the engine. So the return spring in the solenoid return the plunger and also react the pinion gear to its rest position. So this is the concept of solenoid switch. Okay, so there are two conditions. One is before engine start, another one is after engine start. So before engine start, the pinion will move the connector to the lever to the crankshaft. So the engine will start speed up of the starter motor. Once the engine started, the pinion will remove the rotor from the solenoid switch. Okay, so that only the solenoid will be forward and reverse pulling and forward windings will be used in this concept. Okay, so this process are done in the particular particular seconds. So it is very important to crank the engine. So otherwise the engine will be defined with the some problems. Okay, so this is the concept of solenoid switches. Okay, so thank you. We will see in the next class.